Hello, everyone. I'm Ari. Welcome to Season 6 of Bass Tunes on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. I've been toiling away at my website since about 9 in the morning after having gotten about 4 hours of sleep. I'm a little irritated. I'm a little aggravated. One might say I'm angry. And what better thing to talk about on our first episode back in person than Saint Anger Revisited? I'm madly in anger with you, baby. Yeah, that's right. We're coming back to it months and months after originally doing it. And I believe what I called season 3, I believe. I think it was season 3. Just thinking about the color backgrounds. Back in February, we talked about this. And the original caption was, Saint Anger, I don't like this album. The new caption is, of course, I like this album now. And, I'm mostly going to talk about a review that I wrote. Read it out to you guys that I've been working on bits and pieces since about May of this year. Now it's, middle of October. So it's almost been 5 months. And yes, I did count with my hands. I'd be counting with my hands sometimes. Anyways, if you haven't heard the show in a while, this is a different time slot. This is Bass Tunes. We talk about music, media, whatever comes to mind, and we do interviews as well, right? If you want to check me out, I'll plug it in the middle and the end of the show too, but we got the Instagram, BASEDTUNESKUCI, and the website, bassedari.com. And I did put a lot of work into that website recently, like this morning, working on some new features for it, so check it out if you'd like. Let me know your thoughts. Let's get to the review, all right? Obviously, just before we get into the album, like the actual written review, 2003 heavy metal album, big band Metallica after a long sort of like a controversial release. Everyone knows the snare. I didn't really give a lot of exposition in the review, but there's enough of there. So you might get the idea anyways. But, by them, 2003, kind of a controversial mixed to poor reception record for a lot of reasons that I'll get into in the review. But it does mean a lot to me in a lot of ways, so I hope you guys enjoy this. And at the end, I'll sort of give my additional thoughts, maybe interject a bit with some things that come up while I'm reading it, and also just other stuff that comes up, because I got more to talk about than just this, but I don't know how long it's going to take. All right, let's get to it. Saint Anger almost feels like the Room of music, except it's made by a best-selling band who clearly have talent and appeal, which makes it even stranger. Created during a period of strife between the band members and after singer and rhythm guitarist James Hetfield went to rehab for alcoholism and anger, the name, Saint Anger was conceived as a raw, honest portrayal of a band as they were in that period of time, and a return to their early days with the one-take production and high energy. And what makes the album so interesting to me is this strange dichotomy between the intended feel and actual execution of what they were trying to go for. Namely, it's supposed to be this rough project that could have come out of any random garage band, but it was recorded like piecemeal, with overprocessed instruments and stitched together in Pro Tools by the band as they were making it. And before even talking about the themes, the lyrics, or the music itself, what sticks out to me the most on the first listen, even after I listening to it for a while, right, is just how sloppy it sounds. Tracks cut out before they're supposed to. Elements of the instruments are hard to hear, like some of the drum rhythms in the beginning of Frantic. The kick drums are sort of EQ'd out in a really weird way. It's either played really sloppily or it's EQ'd to the point where you can't really hear it with the rest of where the rest of the, instruments sit in the mix, but I guess it's sort of a bit of a 50-50 shot, huh? Right? And much of it sort of sounds like it's precariously close to and might actually be clipping hard. These flaws sort of come across as overly digital and computerized as opposed to spontaneous and real. Each track and even each section of each track, it changes from section to section, almost sound completely different to the others. The volume changes, the way the drums sound differs, like the kick sometimes only has the beater and not the actual reverberating part that has the bassy sound to it, the thump of the kick. That's not really there sometimes. It all changes all the time. And it's not just consistently bad, that would be at least understandable, but why it sounds bad differs often for seemingly nonsensical reasons. And let's not forget about the snare. I'll pull it up in a second so you understand what I'm talking about, but I'll explain how it works first. Created by disconnecting the wires on the snare drum and tuning it very high, it leads to a sound that has no sharp impact. Although, reading over this, I realize sometimes there is sharp impact, because sometimes it sounds like it's being struck, sometimes it basically sounds like a tom drum. I don't know what they were doing. It sounds really inconsistent. And it rings out much longer than what generally works for metal. Sounds like, it was a gore grind I've heard as a comparison term, like a genre or subgenre or whatever you want to call it. Sort of the high-pitched snare of like a Helmet song maybe, but even then, like, not really. It's in a different league of its own. And it sort of explains the common comparison of its sound to a garbage can or oil can drum being struck. Everyone's probably seen the memes, and if you go on Google, you look up Saint Anger, one of the first responses is snare. And how many people know what a snare is? Okay, probably a lot of people know what a snare is. I don't think people are that dumb, right? Or maybe not that dumb. Probably more like knowledgeable. You know, it's a word. Anyways, you want to hear some snare? Here's some snare. You don't understand what I'm talking about. Enjoy. Wait, yeah, actually, I already played the beginning part of that song already. But you see the sort of dong, dong, that like reverberation, the weird pitchy overtone ringing, whatever. I don't get it. Actually, though, let's talk about the cymbal, shall we? What ends up being a bigger issue for the sound of Saint Anger, at least to me, is not the snare 100%, because that can sort of be a stylistic choice. It's maybe intentional. It can be. At least it sort of came off as intentional, and it kind of fits in certain occasions. Although on other occasions, in my opinion, it really doesn't. And one example of that would be anytime it has to go really fast and the drum has a lot of reverberation, I don't think it works as well. But how loud the cymbals and in turn the entire drum kit sit in the mix is what ends up being a bigger issue for the sound. On heavier tracks, especially the title track, it sort of just ends up sounding like a mess of noise. And like especially with the crash cymbals, there's like little to no attack and like large amounts of, I don't know if it's a noise gate or compression or something along those lines. It sort of leads it to sound and act as if it's a wave of white noise, sort of this shh, like this hissing sound, this wave of just hissing sound in your ears 24/7. And it's discomforting at times, you know? Actually, a lot of the time it's discomforting and weird sounding. The kick is biting, having a little more muscle behind it than the clicky sound of And Justice for All, while also sounding like the drummer, Lars Ulrich, of course, is stomping on the pedal with all of his might with every use. A bit of an addendum to that part of the review I'd written. I looked into it some more, and yeah, the kick really does change. Sometimes it does have a nice thump to it. Other times you're basically just hearing the clicky beater sound to it. It's weird, you know? It's very strange. I'd have to sit you down and listen and have you listen to every song on the album to really understand like the weird intricacies of how it really varies song to song. And I have given it enough listens to be a little embarrassed of. But hey, what's up, you know? And I guess we're going to move on to the guitars now because we're just going instrument by instrument, right? It features the band playing at some of the lowest tunings they'd ever reach. We go from drop C sharp all the way down to drop A minor, sounding closer to Korn than their thrash or heavy metal peers. And again, the guitars sort of sound like a mess of sludgy noise. Little no bite to the tone, not being heavy or deep nor sharp and punchy. It's almost nothing. Although, I think a big reason for that does have to do with how it's mixed. There's a lot of low, bassy, mid-low frequencies, not really much high-end, and which is a bit of a difference for the band, at least the majority of the time. They have very sort of high, sort of very bright-sounding guitars that have a lot of bite and sort of grit to them. This, to me, has a bit more of like a sludgy punk rock sound, but like if you just turn the high end up a bit or maybe EQ'd out some of the more muddy lower frequencies, you would probably have a better sound. That's probably how I'd feel for the rest of how it sounds. And obviously I'm talking a lot about the production and all that, and it's not important, but to me it is, And this is the same thing with the bass, right? And the bass is actually played by the producer of the album, Bob Rock, not Robert Trujillo, as some people believe, right? It doesn't hit any of the lower frequencies a bass might need to hit, especially for how low they tuned. So it ends up sort of just being indiscernible at times due to how it was EQ'd and recorded than the band just turning it down. It's kind of mid-low frequency heavy, and it's pretty grating at high volumes, mostly because of the cymbals and the vocals. Now, the bass is interesting to me. I will delve into this a bit more because I don't think I covered it later, but the grooves, some of these bass lines are really good, and it's a shame that I can't really hear them, and I've had to look up, like, automated AI stem re-uploads of the bass, and then I heard it. And then you pull up, like, there's one song where the bass is isolated. There's an actual bass stem of it, and I'll probably pull that up in a bit so you can understand what I'm talking about. That's for the first song, Frantic, not the one that I played in the intro. But it also switches at times. Like, the recording of the bass sounds totally different. Sometimes it's obviously with a heavy pick and with heavy distortion. Other times it sounds like he's playing finger style, and it sounds quieter, and it really, and especially for the Frantic song in the section that it is in, that sort of cleaner bass sound really doesn't mesh well, and it kind of just blends in. It's a weird mix because with the distortion in, and at some times you can sort of hear that sort of like that rumble to the bass, although there's not really enough low end for it to really rumble, but you can sort of hear the distortion in the way the bass sounds. And if you listen to it enough, I feel like I can pick out where the bass is and what the sort of melody is. Like Saint Anger is dum 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 dum, or something like that, right? I can't figure it out 100%. All the tabs online aren't accurate. Listening to it, it's what it is. It's always how it is. I get obsessed with this sort of stuff, right? And finally, I guess we got to get to the vocals. Hetfield sounds right in your face the entire time. There's no processing or mixing that makes it palatable. This S symbol sound very piercing. He either barks or sings with an almost country twang, akin to what he did on Load and Reload, often off-key and unprepared. They didn't really have time to do more than 1 or 2 takes, mind you, or maybe a little bit more than that, but they didn't really have time to hone in the perfect take because, as we would find out on the Some Kind of Monster documentary, after returning from rehab, he ended up having to only work a very limited amount of hours during the day because he had to, spend time with his family, which he didn't do as much, I guess, before then. Or not as much, now that he's in the treatment, whatever. Anyways. Vocal harmonies and backing chants filling the space. You can sort of hear times where he runs out of breath in the middle of a phrase. There's the I'm just doing the impressions because I don't feel like pulling him up, but I can sort of get it right? That's a pretty good example, and that's another thing too, where they recorded this too for the documentary. Because I watched it all the way through. I'll get my thoughts on that too if I have time. He sort of just like, you could see him run out of breath and struggle at the end. He's like, man, you just went into a whole different voice. And all the band members and the producers like, wow, this is so cool. And then people mock it like me. I think it's cool. It's just kind of funny the first time I heard it. And it's still kind of funny now. And there's other times where he just audibly strains to hit high notes like multiple times and sort of slides into them like a inexperienced singer, or probably more likely a singer who hasn't warmed up that much and is just sort of doing it. He's also doing the sort of rock singer voice, which without proper training can be pretty strainful, pretty straining on your chords, especially as you age. He's often quite unintentionally comedic at times with the over-the-top deliveries, right? And for the actual music of the project, Saint Anger is a mid-tempo affair for the most part. These songs, well, they're a thrash metal band. These things chug more than they thrash, and they run long. I will say they thrash a little more than they chug on Load and Reload, but that was a totally different, we're going to go into hard rock territory. Instead, this is a totally different affair, right? And they do run long. The shortest song on here is like 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and that's not super long, although I'd still consider that relatively long for an average pop song. But when a greater percentage of the track list runs past 7 minutes, it gets grating. And I'm serious, more tracks run longer than 7 minutes than one that runs under 6. I'm serious with you. And these aren't 100% like progressive tracks like And Justice for All. The cut and paste nature of the album's arrangements don't just hurt the mixing, they also severely hurt the songs themselves. Most of the songs are composed of 3 to 4 different sections, which are stitched onto each other and then repeated ad nauseum. Listening more and more, I can tell that they're trying to make every single section play for 4 bars so you can have a full measure. Instead of, I don't know, maybe shortening it by half a measure. Like, oh, make it 2 bars instead of 4 bars so you don't play the same thing. Maybe save a new section for later in the song if you're going to do a repetition. And they do sort of do that, but in my opinion, not to the amount that they need to, especially when these songs really could have used a bit of a trimming. Going back to the title track, it restarts twice. It literally starts over twice, basically. And the second time, it just repeats the entire intro for little reason. And the Saint Anger track is a really, really egregious example of this, because there just isn't that much of there's barely any real variation. Anyways. And also, many of these sections still feel very similar track to track. Doesn't help with the grueling process of sitting through the entire album. There's no solos, which is a decision-led guitarist Kirk Hammett said on the documentary Some Kind of Monster, which I just mentioned, came out like 2004. They ended up recording the band, and then it ended up just being this really long making of, like, documenting their entire like lives and personal strife and struggles with each other. It comes out sort of being like, this is Spinal Tap but real, but it's also pretty cool. I thought it was fun to watch. I enjoyed it. And he said that it would sort of date them to this current period in time when they were recording it. And that, of course, was 2003. 2003, mind you, was when nu metal was still around, although it was about on its last legs. I think this might have been after Results May Vary came out, which I consider to be the death spell for nu metal. Sorry, Freddie. Sorry, Fred Durst. I shout you out Fred Durst Friday every Friday, but yeah, I feel like you kind of killed nu metal. I'm sorry. Anyways. Nu metal sort of features little to no solos, staccato riffs, and an emphasis on rhythm and groove over pure speed. Does that sound familiar? Because a lot of that is what Saint Anger is very, very keen on. And those grooves are probably its best strength. Though the drum kit sounds probably the worst it ever will in terms of like objective quality, the rhythms are infectious at times, a lot of the time actually, and complement the guitars quite well. And some examples of this, and I'll also talk about the best tracks, but these are what I consider some of my favorite tracks if you just want the cliff notes. Frantic, first song. Saint Anger, the title track, one of the lead singles. Shoot Me Again, good one. My World, the second shortest song, and the fastest, the most, I'd say, intense, and one of my favorites. And, okay, maybe not Purify. I had Purify there, but I don't think Purify is one of my favorite tracks. But it does have a really nice drum rhythm that goes... I don't really know how to describe. I can't really beatbox it. But I still drum the Frantic one. I'll just move on to this real quick. I just wanted to do a little, I think about the Frantic one a lot, and the Saint Anger one a lot. It's like he shifts the snare to the 3 and the 4th bar of the measure every so often. It's a weird off kilter thing. And then of course when it gets louder, it goes. Enjoy my beatboxing. I consider myself very good at that. If you want to hear more of that, let me know on the social media, shall you? Anyways. The drums almost feel like their own instrument at times. That's the strange part. They change sound like everything else, and I mentioned this already. Often throughout the project, the snare is tuned to the key of each track, and the way that each part of the kit sort of warbles and varies in pitch, it almost adds like a second layer of melody. There's, again, also the way the drums are being mixed. Crash cymbals having little of the actual hit being audible. It sort of fills the soundscape, turns it into this very insular, claustrophobic environment, which does also have a role. The vocals also have a big part in that. I'll go back to that real quickly, because that is interesting to me, because he's right in your face. He's right there, directly in your ear, as I said. But he also kind of fits well in the mix. Like, there's this like low mid, like sludgy cacophony, and somehow James like is pretty audible, almost too sharp and crisp. Although, like every other part of the sound, he could use some more high end because he sounds kind of muffled. It all sounds weirdly muffled and not crisp enough, but not like bassy enough. It's a weird. It's not bright, but it's not dark. It's neither. It's not enough either. And of course, finally getting to the topics, the main themes of the album, aside from the groove, what makes Saint Anger compelling to me, past the enigmatic set of flaws, which is something that I really find interesting about it. I love weird things that don't make sense, is the passion and emotional energy put into it. In spite of the artificial nature, it sounds and reads lyrically like a real display of anger, frustration, and trauma from the band members, mostly the lead singer. And that's not to say the lyrics are always well written. Quite the opposite, actually. There are many lines and phrases that one would consider quite cheesy and a bit odd for a man of James Hetfield's age at the time to sing. They are the most direct and confessional his lyrics would perhaps ever be. Gone are the stories about war, commentaries on corruption, mythical monsters, sort of being the strong, big, burly commentator, just sort of commenting on the world around you. Those are replaced with stories about wanting to control anger, moving past alcoholism and anxiety and depression. Also, the lyrics themselves were actually written as a group instead of just Hetfield. This partially explains why songs were sometimes unfocused lyrically. Little lines would be offered up by individual members, and the legendary metal shredder soloist, the solo guy, the lead guitar guy in the band, he was the one who wrote the infamous lyric, "My lifestyle determines my death style," which I love now. I thought it was corny. I still think it's kind of corny, but it's so like cool. It's funny to me, cause like the music video is about like a guy like, I guess like you see the guy drinking and just hurting himself, not like physically, like, you know what I mean? Just ruining his life, basically, constantly doing that, struggling with the addiction, like I guess James did. So I guess so. Your lifestyle determines when you're gonna go. Your death style, which is dumb, but I still think it's kind of metal at the same time. It's kind of a pretty metal line. And some other lines that I enjoy are "Who's in charge of my head today? Not only do I not know the answer." And then, of course, the way he screams, "I don't even know what the question is," which is performed with such ferocity, about a million times more than I can do right now, so I don't blow the mic out and blow your eardrums out. It ends up being the most psychotic and energetic and just amazing moment on the whole project, which also doesn't help with the drums and everything playing a weird off-kilter 6/4 and 4, like I think it's a 6/4 rhythm and a 4/4 drum beat, or 6/4 guitar. I think that's what I heard. Let me see if I can find it, right? Let's see here. Get him out my head. Gotta get him out. All right. Just listen to this real quick and you'll understand the metal potential. This is the part where it goes nuts. Hold up. Obviously, like that pumped me up even then, right? It's there. And obviously, I think it's a good example of a really fast and heavy moment, which is not very, very often on this album, but it's there. But it's also a sort of obviously it wasn't a ton of time for you to listen, but it's an interesting sort of demonstration of, I'd say, what the problem is with like the mixing on it, the way everything sounds kind of muddy, and the way the double kicks are played where you don't really hear it. Like, I can't tell if he's like playing off time or on time. I know the ending of My World, which I want to play in a little bit too, because it's amazing. I love it. It's probably my favorite part of the album in terms of intensity. That's probably my favorite track on it now. I used to not listen to it at all, which is funny. I thought Shoot Me Again was the worst track, and it's also one of my favorites now. But back to a lot of other things. Sorry, I can talk about this album for hours. Ask Ellie, dude. Ask like my girlfriend. Ask my girlfriend. Yeah, she has probably heard me rant incessantly about it for a while now, at least over text. I try to reduce it in person because I don't know. Also, it just comes up in my head randomly. You know, I listen to that stuff when I wake. I listen to this when I wake up now. Obviously, it's sort of a weird obsession, hyperfixation of mine at the moment, which is kind of the whole name of the game when it comes to this show and my life in general. But man, this one's been going on for a little bit. These obsessions have been lasting longer and longer. The whole new metal Limp Bizkit thing lasted like almost a year, right? 6 months, more than that. Anyways, I ain't dancing with your skeletons. I ain't dancing with what might have been. No, that's another lyric I find pretty funny. Well, cheesy, cool, cheesy and funny, and also the classic, I'm madly in anger with you. Yeah, that's not really good. None of these are good impressions. Anyways, they're absurdly cheesy, but they are quite funny. A lot of the lyrics, though, they sort of generally come off as shallow depth inquisitions on the human mind and behaviors, like someone who went to therapy might have to say. And I'm not saying that going to therapy is bad. It's a great thing. You should do it. But it's like one of those things where I don't know. I feel like I've read a lot about therapy speak, and watching the documentary, I sort of got that sort of weird vibe about it, which we'll explain right now, because a lot of the lyrics were written by by the band, but through group sessions with Phil Towle, a performance coach and a sort of quasi-therapist who was at the band's beck and call during the entire process of Saint Anger. He sort of helped them, I guess, talk to each other, help resolve disputes, and I guess try to do a little bit of creative work with the music. And he also sort of tries to sort of sneak his way in, and the band sort of feels like they need to kick him out. It's an interesting part of it, and it sort of makes you wonder about the whole, like, about, I guess, being careful with who you choose if you want to do, like, therapy. And also, like, that guy's just strange. Like, a performance enhancement coach and, like, using those tactics. I don't know, man. Just, like, hire someone accredited. At least that's my 2 cents, right? Hey, what are you going to do, though? I mean, I think if I recall correctly, talking about the whole point was that he was around all the time when they were making it. So, hey, if he can do that, it's pretty important, right? But I think he did help. I'm fairly certain watching the documentary he did help a good bit. But the lyrics also feel real, especially with the delivery. Though I criticize the lack of ability earlier, at times, Hetfield displays such fire and passion that I can't help but be enthralled. Usually when he screams, singing less so. He almost fully sells the ending of the album where, if you don't recall, he shouts the word kill 40 times in a row in groups of 5. Doesn't 100% stick the landing. A lot of people might be like, this is, again, corny and weird. But you got to respect the attempt. And I do like that song, right? I do like that ending one, All Within My Hands, in a lot of ways. The way that one ends, where it sort of fizzles out and just dies, is really cool. Just playing a bunch of weird open note chords that are out of key and out of tune and just feedback. It's weird. It sounds like the whole thing's falling apart. And that's a pretty good way to end it. And real is generally the best word to describe Saint Anger for me, which is weird to think about if you've actually listened to it, because there's a lot here that sounds artificial, as I've stated before. Like, it's just strange to me on this whole thing that it's meant to be this guys in a garage type of thing, but if you actually listen to the music and watch the documentary and know about that, you will instantly know, like, they were overdubbing. They were recording it bit by bit, piece by piece, working together, figuring out what's going on. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's obviously it's more of the recording. Like, I want it to sound like it, not actually be like it. Because I guess the producer said, like, yeah, I mic'd everything up like once. I didn't change it at all. I just mic'd it and did it once. And I didn't do any passes, and we just did it. And I didn't really care about the mixing. But then again, it's like, and I will give credit where credit is due, some of this review has been with the sort of, not advice, but the knowledge that I gained from a specific YouTube video. Where is it? somewhere in here, yes. On Patrick Musilek's channel, Audio Engineers React to Saint Anger by Metallica. This is a very interesting video. A 3.5 hour long reaction to the entire album with long discussions about what they thought about the music, the mixing especially. And what they said was, it's like, they can tell that this has been overly polished and like processed, but it doesn't sound good. And it's funny because even like these guys are all audio engineers and like producers and recorders, mind you. That's why they're doing it, right? Obviously audio engineers, but still. It was funny because they were even saying like, "Hey, I want to use this as an example of like if I teach someone of what not to do." It's like every time they should have done one thing, they did the opposite. It's like you have to intentionally make something like this, and that's the thing that I find really interesting. A lot of this feels like you have to have actually put effort into making it sound like this. And I can't imagine I can't imagine that. Even Lulu, the weird art rock spoken word metal band, plays in one corner while Lou Reed goes on geriatric ramblings about some old stage play in another corner. Sorry, Warren. Even that one sounded really good. It was actually mixed right. So, hey, what are you going to do about it? But although there's a lot here that's artificial, the impetus for this project, the struggle behind it, the emotions that came out through it, and the sort of basic human feelings that come out through it, and I'll sort of talk about them a little more. Yeah. It's as real as it gets. What could have spelled the end of the band instead spelled a 9 out of 10 from NME and a 0.8 out of 10 from Pitchfork, and one of those classic early 2000s Pitchfork hipster. And I like Pitchfork. I like their website. I like their reviews. But they're kind of snarky in the early 2000s. They were like doing these lackadaisical stories and like, and what's the word? They like make up characters and do weird scenarios and like type in different things. Like one of them is like I think they did like an Eminem album and it was literally just written in email, like an email format. It was something crazy like that, right? And you kind of had to just dig through it. And I wanted to hear the actual readings. Of course, the score was there, but still. Saint Anger is a little bit closer to a real review on there. It's kind of funny, but I kind of wish they wrote an actual review too, because I want to hear what more critics have to say about it. I was consuming the ever-loving mother out of all of this stuff when it comes to the critics' reception on it, because I thought it was really, really interesting seeing different perspectives, right? And then they actually went back to their thrash sound, and people generally liked it, or at least tolerated it, and they've been sort of coasting ever since, except for Lulu. I mean, I would say they've been coasting, mostly sonically and quality of music-wise. They're still doing pretty good for however long they've been around, right? I mean, 72 Seasons came out, and I listened to it, and I was like, it's good. It's all right. I guess their last two ones are better than that, but hey, I gave it the review on the show. I was like, it's a solid 6. I mean, it's some cool thrashy stuff. I want more of this though. In spite of all these flaws, there's an energy to this album that at times I can't get from many others. Even in the months, and I mean months, that I've spent piecing this review together, I've grown to like it more and more. And there's a conclusion to the thing. I have more to say. Give it a shot, and you might feel like I do eventually. Or you might just laugh at the awful snare, terrible mixing, and all the other problems with it and call it a day. Either way, I'm satisfied you gave it a look. Obviously, that review wasn't 100% like me just reading off the script. I did end up speaking a bit to it, adding some addendums in there and going on the classic bass tunes, sort of going off in a million directions every so often, which is sort of the common trend. Common trend for this show. You know how we do it, right? But I'm actually pretty proud of that review. I was going to do it for rateyourmusic.com just to do it, right? I just want to see what I could do. And, I mean, I did it, and it was pretty good. So, I'm satisfied with it. As usual, there could be some more editing to it, a little bit more, like, cohesion with it. But a lot of it's just sort of like a stream of consciousness for me. Stream of consciousness. Anyways, real quick, a boatload of my favorite moments, and then I'll just talk more about it off the cuff and other stuff, right? Number one is the part of it at the ending of Saint Anger, like the third, I guess, verse, where essentially what it does is it plays that original riff, the right? It does that, but that just keeps going instead of switching into the whatever it's. I can't really do it off the top of my head, but you know what I mean. The singing. Anyways, that's sort of like the last verse, and then at the end he just goes set it free. There's like this weird like grinding sound that I write and I agree sounds like an angry cat. It pierces the ears. I don't know how they did it. I love it. It works into the double time section, which comes back really well. I think I find it funny. It's a weird mix. That's like I don't even know it's an angry cat or squealing cat or whatever, because then I started hearing Dimebag Darrell doing pinch harmonics on like Becoming, and then I was like, oh wait, never mind. That's a squealing cat. That's an angry cat there. It's like, man, that song is I love that riff because it makes no sense the way it sounds. It goes dun 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 like it sounds like a cat. I don't have a cat. I have a dog, mind you, and I wouldn't trade Janie for the world. I love you so much, Janie. You're the greatest thing ever. Shout out to Janie. Shout out to everyone else, right? But it's pretty interesting. All of Frantic, maybe cut it down a bit. This is probably the most normal one on here for Metallica. Actually, I don't even know if that's the case. Maybe the most normal one is... Actually, no. Dirty Window is definitely the most normal. It's probably even then, it's like I hear people saying, and I agree, that sounds like their most hardcore punk song they've ever done in terms of the way it's played and the way the song is. So I don't even know. Maybe My World? I don't know. There's not a ton of thrash on here. It's more, it's like what I described, more groovy, more rhythmic based. And the riffs. The ending of Dirty Window, the I drink from the cup of denial. I'm judging the world from my throne. Yeah. Which is in a harmony, which is nice. Whatever. The bridge of Invisible Kid, the ooh, what a good boy you are. Like that part, which is strange because it sounds really shrill and ear piercing, and it's kind of weird because it's a 30, 40-something-year-old man doing that, but it's also kind of fun. And obviously, it's like that whole song is about him being a pretty introverted kid, being, I guess, hiding from his family and hiding from his mom. It's always about the mom. It's always about the mom half the time, At least from what I can tell. The boys with their mom, maybe the girls with their father. I don't know. That's what I've seen. The outro of Invisible Kid. I like this song. It just goes on for way too long, but the fact that it's tuned down really helps with the interesting part of it. But I guess I'm just gonna do these out. I'm just gonna do this vocally. I don't care. It comes in at a weird beat. It's not off of 4/4 time, but it's on the third beat of the measure. So it goes. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, new section immediately, right? So it sort of just kicks you really weirdly, and I like it. It's a bit sloppy, but it has a nice climactic feel, and it sounds like, again, like a Korn song. It's cool, right? I might pull that one up. The ending of My World, all of it. Holy mackerel, it is so energetic. This might be the heaviest song on the whole project, or at least the thrashiest. All of Shoot Me Again, because I love that one. The bridge has this like weird open C chord they're playing. It sounds like a rush of noise in your head. It goes with like the vocal harmonies on all of this song are really nice. I'm just gonna sing it. All the shots I take, I spit back at you. And the rhythm. And I like how simplistic the drum part is on the last chorus. I've heard covers add stuff to it, and I just don't like it. I don't want any fills. I want the kick to sound like it's being slammed on with the force of 1,000 suns, and that's what I got. It goes like... I can't do that one. This one I can't do my mouth. It's too good. It's too complicated. I like the bridge of Purify, the I can find the dirt on anything, whatever. On the end of on the beginning and like the mid, on like the one of the first sections of All Within My Hands, this weird like shoegazy, the like these weird like swirly guitars on it, and it's kind of strange to me because like I didn't expect it to have that sort of vibe to it. And it is pretty similar to some of the earlier stuff that they were doing on like when they were recording in 2001. I thought that was pretty cool. Right? And finally, for number 10, out of the top 10 favorite moments, Saint Anger. Kill, 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 kill! Obviously, man. Obviously, you got to put that one in there. And that goes on for an eternity. Also, that one comes in, that ending part of the song also comes in off a weird bridge. That's another thing, right? It's like, I guess another good descriptor of how of like what's unique about this album and their discography, and I guess a lot of metal, is one, having the guts to sort of break metal down to the primordial soup element. And number two, I would generally say, is this, right? Number two, it's sort of switching off into, okay, here's a song. Okay, it's like there's a verse, chorus, then here's like an entirely different song's worth. It's like it just stretches out and progresses, at least with the And Justice type of thing, where it just keeps on morphing and changing and expanding. But instead, you have like you just have like a bunch of sections stitched together, and they all sort of move on, and they sort of add a little bit. There's little differences in how they sound, little vocal parts. And at times, some of them flow well enough where you don't really notice the fact that 7 minutes have gone by, which is a pretty good accomplishment. But in all fairness, if you don't like how it sounds, you're going to hate those 7 minutes. You wouldn't have even liked it if it was 5 or 3, but honestly, you might have preferred if it was 5 or 3, What's the deal with long song lengths? What's the deal with airline food? Oh, come on, Kramer, what's going on? I've been watching too much of a certain podcast where they do dumb impressions, and they're not very funny. They're very funny, but they're very offensive. Anyways. This album does mean a lot to me emotionally, though, because I really did sort of lean on it. I lean on it sometimes when I'm really frustrated or really excited. Because when I'm angry, I want to feel that sort of wash of noise and that sort of just it's just, everything sucks. Everything's like, but it's like different from like a new metal type of thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like everything sucks. My family hates me. I don't want to be here. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to do anything. My girlfriend broke up with me. My girlfriend, she doesn't want me anymore. You know what I mean? Like whatever you want to call it. That's a little different. Obviously, I mean, this album's but it's a little more real than that. It's like you can sort of, I guess you can sort of, shall we say, you can meld together, all right? You can sort of listen to this lyrically, thematically, emotionally as both a 15-year-old kid and a 40-year-old man, and you can still get some amount of enjoyment out of it. Because one is like, the unnamed feeling, it comes, it's taking me away. I'm angry. I want to control my anger. Oh, why are all these voices and people telling me what to do? Oh, I won't let the voices in my head win. I'm gonna make my head my world. I can't deal with this depression, or I guess depression, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is. And also it's like, Mama, why's it raining in my room? Speaking of that riff, it's also a lot of what is it? It's the dun 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 dun. What is it? The 035. Is it 035? 035? 035? Yep, the 035 tab, which is the 0th, 3rd, and 5th fret. But it's a little more complicated than Smoke on the Water, a little bit faster. And these riffs, man, they're insane. I have to keep telling you this. They're heavy, and they're so cool sounding at times, and they have this sort of sludgy to it. And I've heard Fuel in the sound of this album, and I think it works super well. Also, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due by Megadeth. These work so well. Like, what? Anyways, here's Fuel. Here's Fuel instrumental, if I can really quickly pull that up, and then I'll sort of give a little outro and all that stuff, because you got to tune in for 5:30 Operation Community with Anne, because you have to listen to that one, because she's been my show neighbor for however long I've been on the station, and she's been great, and her show is great. It's amazing. They're great. I don't know what's going on. I have really not slept enough today. Here it is. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. A lot of that sonically and rhythmically really does actually fit what you're going to get with this album. So if you like that, check it out. If you don't, still check it out. It's a fun listen and it's an interesting time. If you want to skip through the songs, do it. The album's like 70-something minutes long, and it feels long if you're not liking it. But I have developed Stockholm Syndrome for this album. It means a lot, and it's so interesting to read about what is going on with this. Like, how did this happen? I love these sort of things. That's why it's The Room. It's like, that's why I think it's like, I like so bad that it's good. It's so interesting. The stories are interesting and enigmatic. You don't even know what's going to happen. You don't even know why this even happened in the first place. You know what I mean? But yeah, let's see here. I do want to give a couple of quick shout-outs. Shout out to Amir Hossein and Rana for getting married. My cousin. I was there last week. That's why I wasn't doing the show last week. So the premiere was delayed by a week, unfortunately. Very sad. But shout out to you too. Shout out to the happy newlyweds. I think they're busy off in Europe doing honeymoon stuff. So shout out to them. Beautiful place. I went to Turkey. They did this wedding in Turkey. It was great. I got to talk to some Google executives. There was a guy there, not executives, some Google employees, because I guess everyone that he knows works at Google. Everyone that he's friends with works at Google. Shout out to him, bro. And there was a guy there. One of the guys was British, and he was telling me about how when he was 14, he made a website, made an Ali G translator, and that made my day. Because obviously. And then, of course, he whipped out the ChatGPT because, pro tip, everyone talks about ChatGPT all the time, and I'm like the only one who's like, it's kind of goofy, guys. It's kind of weird. AI is kind of weird. It's kind of hard to be trusted. You kind of got to be careful with it, even though I will use it, and I don't care. I have ChatGPT Plus, and I will use it. I've used it to help with a website. Just the latest feature, not the rest of it, because, I mean, I wanted to learn on my own, and I kind of forgot it was good at that stuff. But anyways, okay. I am glad to be back though. I was really sick like last Tuesday. I'm good now, but I had a pretty bad. I was out for a while, not for a while, but I was out for a bit. I'm glad I'm back, dude. I'm glad we're back. I have a lot of excitement for this quarter, both for my show and for the station as a whole. Just letting you know, since I am running sort of the social side of things as well, we have some pretty cool stuff planned in the future, hopefully. You know, we got some videos planned out. You know, if you're on campus at some point next week, expect to be asked what you're listening to by me, Mr. Bass Tunes, KUCI, Mr. Me. Also, maybe expect to see posters of me around on campus sometime soon. If I can get that sorted, I have to go to Staples or somewhere and print it. It'll be annoying, but hey, what are you gonna do about that? And expect to see more Bass Tunes classics, more amazing episodes of the show. Right? I don't think I have a topic for next week, but you will find one out on my Instagram plug, which is BASEDTUNESKUCI on Instagram. Check out my website, basedari.com. You can check out who I am, what I do, where are my socials. If you want to check out the recordings of my show or anything like that, you can check that out there. It's all one place. And any jobs, any internships listening, radio internships, whatever you want to do, you can listen to this and send me a message and maybe hire me, maybe make me have my money. No, I'm pretty stoked with how things are going right now with the whole marketing thing, right? But, as your show host, I've been Ari. This has been Bass Tunes, KUCI at 8.9 FM in Irvine. New time slot. Tune in next week, 4:30 p.m. Same bass time, same bass channel. Stay tuned for Ann's Operation Community Stimulus. Thank you for listening. Stay based. All right, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. It's Fred Durst. Kill. Bow, down, bow. Love you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye.